Okay, before we start, I'll just do the acknowledgement of country. So, in the spirit of reconciliation, the State Society of Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So in particular, I reflect on how Indigenous people and their perspectives are included and represented in data and analytics. Okay, so without further ado, we will kick off. So Lillian, you are our first speaker, and we will be is that right?
Well, I don't know if we have an order.
Charmaine, do we have who would like to speak first?
Go for it. I will start.
Charmaine, could you start? And we'll give everybody about 10-15 minutes, but we will try and allocate the time a little bit, organically. Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hear that there's over 100 attendees, so that's fantastic news. We've done a lot of promoting, so well done, everyone. So I'm a bit of a seasoned data and digital professional with a rich 15-year career. I guess it's spanning government and industry sectors across Australia and in the UK. My journey really has given me kind of a unique perspective, particularly on the importance of diversity in the field. At the moment, I'm currently a Power BI developer. So whilst I've been working in data for 15 years, I've gone to the dark side of IT and bridging that gap between statistics and tech, and working in the major IT projects division at the Department of Treasury. I think I like my role to, that person that really likes to debug code and develop insightful dashboards. So that's the type of thing that kind of floats my boat. And in my spare time, I'm an active volunteer with the Women in Big Data in Canberra, which is led by Jane Alexander. It's a non-profit organisation dedicated to connecting, engaging and empowering really women to be bold and advance in their data and tech field. I also host the Women Count podcast show. So if you're on LinkedIn, just send me a chat and connect, and I can show you, I can send you all the deets for that podcast. And what I do is I interview females that are working in the data profession and people that are leaders in places like tech, and they share their lived experience. It feels so authentic connecting with them, and hopefully we inspire others to do the same and thrive in your field. So in my career, I guess I've observed a bit of a gender gap over the years, but I am starting to see that shift in the industry, particularly in leadership roles. Interestingly, where I work at Treasury, it's probably the best gender representation I've actually seen in regards to leaders in the tech division. So that's really hopeful, and yeah, I'm really thankful I'm kind of part of that team. And I'm very excited to be here to share my experience. I hope to get value out of this session. I hope you do too. And yeah, I'm really excited to get this kind of discussion started. I might head over to Ollie to start with his introduction, and then we can get a bit of a discussion going on to talk about, how you guys can benefit from the information and the experience that we've had to get your head start in your career.
Cool, thanks, Charmaine. So I'm Ollie. I guess I'll start with the reason why I'm one of the panelists today. About 3 years ago, I completed my PhD in statistics at the University of Auckland, and have since made the jump into the big wide world of data science and the data science industry. So I currently work at a company based in Auckland called Luma Analytics. We're a data and analytics consulting firm. My current role title is a data science manager. I guess I often get asked, what does that actually mean? I guess it means that I manage a team of data scientists on a variety of data-related projects. But more specifically, what it really means is that we solve, a variety of data-related problems for our clients who can come from a real range of industries. Where there is data problems, and that's where we come in. But broadly, I'd say the work that I do fits into one of the three sort of main delivery lines. The first of those being things relating to cloud data platforms. So that's typically where we have clients who are looking to get data from some sort of source system, or maybe move from an on-premise database into the cloud, which is, the modern way of doing things. That work is typically, I guess, what you'd call in the space of data engineering. We also do things in sort of the likes of reporting and business intelligence solutions. That's often building dashboards and actually making sense of the data that a client will have in their database. So I think as data and data science has become more popular over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, a lot of companies are aware that they should be doing the data science, but they don't necessarily know what it is. So they often need to actually just get their reporting in line to understand, their key business metrics. What do they know about their business, their customers? And are they actually tracking these things over time? So things like KPIs that are really important for them to know. So building those kinds of automated reports means that you can get away from having one person who has to continuously invest there week to week and day, and keeping these reports up to date and accurate. And then the third of those pillars is sort of more in, I guess, what you call data science and advanced modeling. So once clients have kind of got their reporting up to scratch, they can start digging a little bit deeper and asking more bespoke questions and trying to, fit statistical models and using, trendy terms like machine learning and AI to help answer those questions. Underpinning all of that as well, we do a bit of sort of strategic consulting work, which is often precedes any actual technical work we'll do, where we'll go into a business and actually help them decide, what technology are they actually going to use? How are they using data? Are there any improvements they could make to those processes? Because it can be very expensive investing into technology, and if you go down the wrong path without thinking about what you're doing, you quickly get yourself into all sorts of a mess. So we would like to be there from the start of a client going on their own sort of data-driven journey, and helping them understand what the right technologies are for them and where they should be taking it. So yeah, hoping today to be able to maybe answer some questions to some people who are looking to make that jump from academia to industry. It's something I've done, hopefully, I think, somewhat successfully in the last few years, and should have hopefully some insight for anyone looking to do the same.
Oh, great. Thank you, Charmaine and Oliver, Ollie. Before we just hear from everybody, I thought we might pause and see if people wanted to ask some questions, perhaps, before they get an overload of information. So Charmaine was emphasising the importance of diversity in the workplace and how she's seen that change in leadership as well as in teams. And then Ollie's been talking about the kinds of work he's been involved in across tech, reporting and data science and modeling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, are there any questions from the floor before we dive too deeply in and forget everything?
I have to note though, I'm in a bit of a Canberra bubble, so what I experience might be so different, almost the opposite in the industries, or even at university, with the things that you're experiencing. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see if anybody has any questions or insights on that.
Yeah. Okay, so I think there might be some things in the chat. Is that right, Michael?
There's no one in the chat, but I had a question for Charmaine. I was just curious what your thoughts on maybe the main sort of driving factors in the sort of restoration of some balance that you've been seeing recently might be.
Sorry, the restoration of?
Oh, so I was wondering what sort of the driving factors that are bringing back a better balance of diversity that you've been seeing recently might be.
I think that it starts from the top, I believe. So what I've been experiencing is that when you drive advocacy at the top levels, and you advocate for up and coming, so I like to use the adage of you're putting the ladder down for those to come up with you, and you give them a space at the table. I'm finding that is a significant shift in what I'm seeing. The other thing is things like flexible working arrangements. Someone like myself who's a full-time employee, but I also have 2 children. I've actually taken a step back and taken one day off so I can be with my children. So having that flexibility, so that I can kind of lead from a different perspective, but also still get my work done. The other thing with flexible working is actually having part-time, leadership roles. The reason why I never did kind of go down that corporate ladder route is because I love the tools. I actually get a dopamine hit from it every time I, run my code and it works, and, smash the computer when it doesn't. There was no, like at the time, there was no kind of space for me to kind of lead in that role. So, you know, I carved my own kind of leadership path. And I think being able to kind of have mentors, those type of things really help kind of bridge that gap and, you know, hopefully bring it into balance.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
I'm interested to see from Oliver's perspective, have you seen that shift? Because you're in a kind of private industry. Do you see that in your sphere?
Yeah, a wee bit. I mean, yeah, so we work across a lot of different businesses, from anything from sort of financial services, banking, insurance, to government work and the public service. So I think what we're seeing is it's different with every single industry, right? And in different industries, you have their own way of approaching it. I wouldn't say there's a one size fits all approach. But yeah, sort of really depends on who you're talking about, which businesses you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the data space versus the tech space. Yeah, there's a stark difference. Absolutely.
I have a question for you, Charmaine. So, do you think that there are more feminine, well, not feminine, but more diversity in the approaches to doing things? So, rather than competitive, sort of combative approaches, there's more feminist?
In terms of recruitment approaches and things like that?
Well, mostly in the way that people do things.
Yeah, I guess that it all comes down to having that conversation. If you can have that conversation and you call out things that are, you know, unconscious bias, you call out things that are you've got an ally that can advocate for you. It's really about just keeping it that high level, being kind, and calling out when things don't look right. A lot of us, for instance, we do like the APS census. A lot of the time we will call something out anonymously, but a lot of the time we don't know what, say, a barrier will look like because it's not well defined. So what we need to do is have more of those awkward conversations, or I like to say, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's how we move forward. Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay, well, I don't think we've got anyone with their hands up at the moment from the audience. So maybe we'll just hear from a third person. So Lillian or Jonathan, would you like to talk next?
I can go. I'm Lillian, and currently I am a senior data analyst at the Ministry for the Environment here in New Zealand. I have a master's degree in analytics, and before that I had around 10 years experience working as like a digital marketing person. So with my marketing hat on, I am very passionate about data communications, and I think we are really at the point that we need people to be on board with us. We can't just go on this data journey like with all the technical people in one room. We need our stakeholders, we need their support, and I'm very passionate about driving that gap. And I have only worked in the public sector ever since I fully transited to become a data person. I think I work at health, work at tourism, and also a bit of like helping out the US California Public Health Department on their tableau dashboard and stuff like that. And all of this, I love working in the public sector. It's not the sector that moves the fastest, but I do like to see how the data you analyze or your work that has an impact on our society. And for that particular reason, we really need to get other people on board with us. And speaking of which, that's why I really like to utilize a lot of front-end tools or frameworks to communicate insights with people. And I, because of my background in marketing, I have a high standard for visualization, and I love the flexibility that Shiny can give me. And I always like tell people that how great Shiny can be. It's not just a visualization tool. It can be a tool that helps you to do basically everything that a web application can do. Yeah, and it's about how to utilize those functions or available tools to help you communicate to your stakeholders. And and I would love to share a bit more later in this session, I guess. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Lillian. I'll just check the chat. Do you have anyone? Does anyone from the floor like to ask a question of Lillian?
We have a couple of questions from the chat. I guess I'll just read them out. So Kevin asked, what are the most common problems encountered when working with data? Can you provide some practical examples? I wonder if that's directed at Ollie, but anyone can feel free to jump in on that one, I guess.
So I can maybe start with a quick one. I think the main thing that, particularly making the jump from, say, academia to industry, is that the data won't be as clean as what you've seen in your assignments. You're going to spend a lot more time cleaning data than actually maybe doing the analysis and the modeling side of things. So that's a pretty typical problem that you'll encounter. And I think being able to develop your skills of manipulating data, cleaning data, and identifying problems with data is super important. Because if you're unable to do that, you're going to maybe start using a data set that's actually not that useful, and it's not got much, hasn't got much in there to pull out. So yeah, I'd say that's the main thing you're going to encounter, especially early in your career, is the data won't be the same as necessarily what you've seen in a university.
Yeah, I second that, and I think it's also about the mindset, like coming out from university, that you think you learn this cool regression model that you want to apply to your job on day one, but maybe all you need to do is just clean the data, which is fine. It's not the most glamorous thing to do, but if you do it well, you can gain people's support and trust, and then that allows you to do more cool things later on. So I think that's probably not so the actual problem with the data, but like when how you see dealing with those problems. Yeah.
Maybe one thing I might add to that is because you don't get a free choice on data, often the data can be biased. And so one of the big kind of cautions is actually drawing conclusions that can actually just be a function of where the data is coming from or how it's been collected, rather than there's an actual trend or something going on in the data. So I think sometimes people who are not skilled in data can make that mistake. And I think one of our jobs as data scientists and statisticians is to actually pull back on conclusions too quickly to make sure we get it right.
I like the comedian Don McMillan. If you've seen his videos, he's got this this statistic that's quite hilarious. There are 1.4 billion people in China. There are 7 billion people on Earth. Hence, 1 out of 5 babies born on Earth are Chinese. If you have 4 kids, you're expecting your 5th will be Chinese. I just find that hilarious. And this is the thing, there's a whole bunch of websites out there that will give you information on misleading statistics. And so you've got to be mindful of how it was collected, and like you said, Jonathan, the biases inside that data, how it was collected, particularly when it comes to survey information.
Thanks, everybody. Michael, is there another few questions?
Yes, there are a few. So I'll read out this one here, and then it has a follow-up question from someone else, but I'll read out the first part. So NP said, for technical people coming from a non-data or analytics background, there are so many training options that it can feel a little overwhelming where to start. Does the collective have a recommendation in what kind of foundational skills you all consider to be fundamental for growing into an effective analytics practitioner? And then there was a follow-up from Kurt that said, could any of you comment on what the process is like for those with the opposite background, strong mathematics background, but no knowledge of the industry? What was it that drew you into data analysis, and how did you break ground into data science? So a bit of a long one, but
I guess I can answer as someone who comes from a non-technical background and transit into this role. Start small. Don't be too ambitious. Like, today you hear about Julia, next day you hear about some other fancy language, but you don't even know Python or R. Just pick one and start and get good at it. And syntax is nothing. Like I personally don't remember syntax. I often Google how to create a data frame in R. I don't remember those, but I know what I needed to do. And with like now a lot of AI tools out there, you don't need to remember your syntax, but you do need to know what problem you are trying to solve. And I think if you can start small, say if you start with Python, if you get familiar with the Python syntax, you know what's available, the basic functions that you can apply, then try to do some projects. I really think that doing projects is a very good way to fast track your skill. And the other thing is that I went to a talk and someone asked me that, I don't know how to find a job. I have 10 years experience in finance sector, but I am new to data. I was like, that's your great asset there, because you have the domain knowledge that other people don't have. So try to think how to connect your technical skill with your domain knowledge, and because that makes you a unique person on that job, not like what people call cold monkey. You don't want to be a cold monkey. You want to be able to derive insights and yeah, I think that's very important. Don't undermine your own personal experience and how that can translate into doing your job as a data analyst. Yeah.
To maybe build on that point, I can probably approach Kurt, not so much MP's question, but Kurt's question coming from a more technical background, but no knowledge of the industry, because that was me sort of 3-4 years ago. And I guess the main advice I would say is just back yourself. When I first started, I was a little bit terrified of, I don't know anything about the industry, but I guess I had pretty good R skills. I had half decent Python skills and a little bit of SQL. And a lot of the work that I guess I do as a consulting data science is just problem solving. So if you have those fundamental technical skills, the problem solving kind of does start coming naturally. And you quickly realize that there is no right approach to things. There are better and worse ways of doing things, but ultimately every problem can have 10 different solutions. So it's all about, I guess, identifying the best solution, and just backing yourself that you have those technical skills that you've spent years studying at university with. And just, I guess, trusting that you're going to be able to come up with a really sound analysis of a problem, draw out some good insights, because that's what you've been learning to do at university, and then go from there. And I think that the key point as well is to also practice your communication of your insights. That's the big one, really, because you can build the most complex or interesting model in the world, which some technical people might appreciate the finer nuances of what you've done, but depending on your audience, they won't necessarily have quite that same level of interest in what you've done. So learning how to communicate your results, and communicating your results to a range of technical audiences. So one day you might be speaking to an executive or a CEO, and they just really need you to what are the key points of this? Other days you might need to be explaining the really technical elements of your model to a company's technical team. So learning how to tailor your conversation and tailor communication to who's involved is, I think, a really important way and a really key thing for breaking ground in data science.
Great insights. So, Jonathan, we haven't heard from you yet. Should we segue to you now?
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm Jonathan. Been in the public service for the last 13 or so years. And basically, I came out of uni as a statistician, but kind of worked in a whole bunch of different, statistics and data analysis, as the case was when I started, and then kind of drifting into data science and now data engineering. So kind of been working in different capacities. And I think, maybe just to answer some of the questions that have gone past, in some ways, like you build a foundation, but it's really easy to expand into like the other parts of the data analysis world or the data science world. And one of the best ways of doing that is actually just learning on the job, and learning from other people. So, at the moment I'm working a bit like Charmaine using Power BI and a bit of SAS and Databricks kind of to start building a whole infrastructure for our data platform. And and one of the other, like, I guess I work in a small agency where in some ways my role keeps shifting. So in the process of developing the data infrastructure, we've now developed a platform for reporting, and now I'm kind of moving into data analysis and data science related stuff. And I think it's one of the best things about government is you get to do different things at different times, even in the same job. And yeah, really, really loved doing that. Maybe I'll just leave it there.
Thanks, Jonathan. Michael, it looks like the chat is still active. I'm not sure if any of those questions are relevant.
Yep. So we could do a callback one to Lillian. Someone asked, so with Shiny, you reckon, so with Shiny, you reckon it can replace things like Power BI or Tableau, among other things?
I definitely don't think that. And I know Charmaine would disagree as well. And as someone who experienced how difficult, how comprehensive Tableau can be as firsthand, I don't think these two are like BI tools and Shiny, I don't think they're a competitor. I would personally think that if you are working on like periodic reporting for like within corporate setting, definitely those BI tools are your friends, because there are a lot of settings and inbuilt functions that are it's just there for you to use, and it's clear to understand, even though you're not a coder, so which means your managers or other people know what you're doing. And but I like Shiny because from the context of data science or exploratory analysis, often if you do some coding and analysis in R and you want to show, for example, scientists, and then they don't trust your calculation, and you need to show them a step-by-step walkthrough, or they want to show, oh, how about this, like changing what you visualize on that regression model, whatever. I just love the flexibility that I can translate my code onto a front-end thing for them to interact and get an understanding of like what I have been doing. I think Shiny is also a very great way to enable, like it also depends on how much action you want your users do. Do you want them to download something? Do you want to they click something and something else pop up? Do you want to use their geolocation and add some more function? I just love that flexibility of Shiny, and I think it's a really good front-end tool. It's not just for dashboarding. So I don't think they are two things that they are like we replace each other. Yeah, and if you don't have a lot of like money to buy to purchase a Power BI license, then Shiny can be also your friend to start doing some dashboards. Yeah. Does that answer Andrew's question?
Thanks, Lily. That's great. What about Jonathan? Was at a different end of the spectrum using SAS and Databricks. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more, Jonathan, and contrast it with, say, Shiny?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just step back from directly answering that. I guess I've worked in different agencies with different amount of money, and I kind of think what you need to do to be kind of an effective data scientist is just go with the flow. And so sometimes you'll have the flexibility to fork out for Power BI, but if you still want to make a difference, you can actually do that using R and Shiny, and it's free. And so I think being kind of system agnostic is in some ways the best. And as you keep kind of working through different projects, you keep learning new skills. In some ways, it's actually not hard to shift between products because they're all essentially the same. They just have their own little quirks and syntax and style. But so, you know, one of the things I love about Databricks is it's really helpful for my team who have come from different backgrounds to actually work on the same platform. And so that's a nice thing in that it's there's a kind of a solid base for everyone to kind of contribute without feeling like they've got to catch up. But it's also a great kind of area for people to learn new skills on our team as well on the job. I don't know if Ollie, you've got insight on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I think the one of the most exciting things or interesting things to me about the industry is that you are always learning. So you always got a new client, a new problem, and there is no same solution to two different problems. Every problem is unique. So one day you might be using Power BI, another day you may be using Shiny, and to sort of pigeonhole yourself and say I only do one of these things is kind of hamstringing yourself. So I quite like learning new things, and that keeps things fresh and exciting. Power BI, I think, does have its place, and particularly when we're working with maybe larger, more corporate industries that are already Microsoft shops. That's where you're going to probably end up using Power BI. And there are some instances where perhaps in our Shiny dashboard is actually more suitable. It's a bit more flexible. You can do a bit more, as it's a bit of a coding-based solution, and Power BI doesn't have the same flexibility. At the same time, you've got to remember you want to make sure all of this company's reports have the same look and feel. So you don't want to start developing all these tiny little bespoke solutions for certain teams that don't line up with the rest of the business. So there are a few considerations to have when you are looking at what's the right tool or technology to use for a certain problem or a certain company. I like Jonathan's comment about Databricks. I'm a massive fan of Databricks. I think it allows people to come together from people who use R, people who use Python. They can actually start developing solutions together. I think it's a really awesome tool for doing that kind of cross-platform work. So yeah, I quite enjoy projects where I'm exposed to Databricks, but at the same time, Power BI projects, Tableau projects, they all have their own interesting quirks as well. My general, this is my feel, and this is just what I've observed in New Zealand, is that Tableau is probably dying a wee bit. It kind of had a bit more of a market share perhaps a few years ago, but I feel that Power BI has actually developed and come quite a long way over the last 3 years, and we're certainly seeing a lot more of the work we're doing in New Zealand is Power BI focused over Tableau.
I've definitely seen that shift over the last few years. I started with SAS, but don't ever discount Excel. Excel has its place as well. So if you don't have those technical skills, just a few coefficient variations in Excel is perfectly fine. But the other thing I wanted to also add on to everyone's contributions to the different tools is also think about the databases or any type of database that you might be developing. It's a good thing to understand a little bit about data modeling. It's a powerful tool for accessing and manipulating, analyzing stored data in like a relational way. So you've got your fact tables, your information of all your counts and your information, and then you've got your lookup tables. It just having an understanding of that will set you up for working with Power BI and working with other things like Databricks and Azure Data Factory, that type of thing.
That's great, because obviously it's hard to do anything unless you have a good tool. The chat seems to be growing. So Michael, where would you like us to go next?
Okay, we have a question, or a few people seem to be interested. I'll read this one out. For those who are in the industry, can you tell us about the use of ChatGPT and how it has been dealt with in companies? Using ChatGPT as a learning tool, is it frowned upon or welcomed?
I'm happy to start with where I'm at the moment. It is welcomed, but obviously you have to take care in the information that you put out to the masses of the world. So you just have to be be sensible with what you're actually putting out there. But yeah, as a learning tool, it's fantastic. Be aware of hallucinations, because you think a certain code will work and then you plug it in and it doesn't exist. So I would say yes, it's very effective in learning, but yeah, be very mindful about the data behind it.
To build on Charmaine's point quickly, I think, yeah, absolutely. It's a great tool, right? But that's what it is. It is a tool. So don't become too reliant on it. Having said that, I think learning a new computing language has never been so easy. With the likes of ChatGPT, I for one could say, when's the last time I actually went to Stack Overflow? It's probably been a couple of months, right? And that sort of was an interesting process, training myself out of when I had a coding problem. How am I going to Google? Well, actually, no, I'm going to my old friend ChatGPT now, and usually it's pretty good at finding a solution. So that's what it is. It's a new tool. Just like I think when I was at school and university, the key was to learn how to Google and learn how to ask Google the right question to get the answer you wanted. That's what ChatGPT is becoming, is just something that you need to learn how to use. And I think, with tech being a pretty fast moving industry, if you don't move with it, you can quickly get left behind. So I think it is really important to stay up to speed with it. I have seen some companies that have had a pretty blanket approach of banning it because, there are some security implications, which I can understand, I suppose, from a security perspective, but I do also think that's an interesting approach to take because it does have a lot of benefits to add, and I do think the benefits outweigh the negatives.
I can probably say something to that as well. I use ChatGPT daily. It's really helpful for efficiency. Because on the side, I also do some marketing work, and now it's just different world. It's so much easier to do that. But I do want to give a caution warning. If you are a complete beginner, don't just use ChatGPT, pair it with an online course. You can use ChatGPT as your personal tutor. If you don't understand something from the course, ask ChatGPT, what does it mean? Give me an example. Because I've found it many times, like Charmaine said, it will give you something that doesn't exist. If you don't have any idea about that language, you get confused by it. And then you just go into the rabbit hole. You don't know how to fix that code anymore. So that's the only thing. But on the other hand, is very useful when, even though it won't give you the correct answers, I find it useful is when it provides a concept of how the ChatGPT try to solve a problem, and then I walk away and think of how I can implement it actually in my code. So just that, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just pipe up a little here, Summer. One of the things I'm interested in is whether people as statisticians or data science experts, which you all are in the industry, whether you're finding that people are coming to you to help judge the stuff that generative AI tells you. So in my job as an advising statistician, I had a look and saw that a lot of the online stuff was advising that in analysis of variance, one of the assumptions was that the data is normal, which isn't quite right. So, but that's the type of thing that comes back from these generative AI or Google. So I was just wondering, is this changing your role as the data science stats expert?
I don't think so. We actually don't use ChatGPT to derive any statistics. It is literally just there to give you advice on whether your code works, whether now with ChatGPT-4 you can pass the internet, but you always have to validate. That's one of the things. You never depend on one source. One of the challenges in the fact that we work that we regularly face in our work is actually validating the data is correct. So always have peer reviews, ensure that the information that you have derived is actually sound and it is without bias and things like that. So I would never heavily rely on ChatGPT for statistics.
No, I mean, not so much what you do, but what other people perceive is the right thing to do. I
actually haven't had someone say, this is, just to kind of like validate it. Is this correct? What about you guys? Ollie, Lillian, Jonathan? Has anyone come to you?
I think Simon's point would be quite interesting in terms of I do think there are going to be people in roles right now who maybe aren't from a strong statistical background, who are using it to lean on to get advice from, and some of that advice may be incorrect. So that's one concern I do have, and I think it is inevitably happening out there right now. There are people developing reports, analyses that are a little bit flawed. Now, that was probably already happening before ChatGPT, but now it might be happening at a higher rate. I don't know if it really answers the question. I think it's just more of a concern of that these things are happening, and it does come down to ultimately needing that validation. So needing to validate what comes out of it. And when it comes to, I think, maybe getting things like code from ChatGPT, making sure that you build it into your own code, but then also comment it really strongly. Or if you got code from ChatGPT, maybe provide the prompt that you gave it, so someone reading your code can understand, hey, this person hasn't written the code themselves, but what did they use to generate it? So I think a lot of it just comes down to validating the output and making sure that what you are getting out of it is actually correct and trustworthy.
We have a couple of other quickfire ChatGPT related ones. We have Michael asking about using it for writing reports based on decisions and outcomes you have found from analysis, and if you guys have found that to be a bit of a game changer. And then just another quick one is someone who is very proficient with R, but is using ChatGPT to learn Python. How would interviewers for jobs receive that information? How would they feel about that? I guess I mean.
In my experience, as long as you can do the job, you can learn it however you like, and it's a good way to learn, I guess, because again, once you're good with one language, you probably will find those online courses a bit slow, and you have a specific question you want to answer. So that way, I think ChatGPT is actually quite good, I think. But I don't know whether you guys have experienced that, like that when people tell you they learn from ChatGPT, and yeah.
I popped in some data a couple of times just to see what it'll spit out, and yeah, often it doesn't quite capture. I know what the story is, but it doesn't quite capture what you want. So yeah, that I don't have confidence with it to actually spit out that information yet. But who knows? The way that organizations are moving now, with actually having Copilot just within their section to be able to pass and search information on their SharePoint, it might actually be a valuable source for deriving insights because it's based on just that data. But again, validation.
To the first point that Michael asked about using it for writing reports, I think it's a really strong tool, especially if writing is not something that is your strong suit. I haven't done it myself, but I just quite like writing personally, so that's just a me thing perhaps. But if it works, like Lillian said. So if you can get a good report and it sounds like it's summing up all of your facts and all your key insights correctly, then go for it. Just again, it comes down to that validation piece. Is it actually saying what you wanted to say? Because if not, then it's when you're getting things wrong. Actually, as a bit of a side point, it's quite funny. My partner's a high school teacher, and you can sort of see the kids are using it more and more. And I think you can quickly get a feel for some things just sound a bit ChatGPT-ish or sound a bit robotish. So sometimes writing a report and just making sure it has a bit of a human feel to it is quite beneficial, rather than handing something over and it just feels a bit sort of robotic and like not authentic. So I do think it is important to add a little bit of your own personal flavor into it as well.
I definitely use it as a wordsmith and like Grammarly, really. My grammar is horrendous otherwise.
I can add one more point as someone whose like native language is not English. I really love that feature of ChatGPT, and I know some researchers are also using it to write a research paper. Of course, there is like pros and cons on that, but I think it's something it's worth to navigate through, because that enable like good communications and you can express your idea regardless what language you speak. I think that's a beauty in itself. Yeah.
Jonathan, did you want to pipe in there and contribute?
I should say ChatGPT is banned in our organisation, so no one uses it at all for security purposes. I think one thing I would say, and maybe this is mildly off point, but actually I find communication of analysis is actually really tricky. Usually if you're saying something that someone's going to agree with, you can pretty much say it however you like. If you're trying to say something that might be mildly controversial or surprising, you really need to work hard in the communication. And maybe I would say I wouldn't leave it up to ChatGPT to do that work, and probably has to have that human argument and kind of well laid out clearly. And even so, you can probably do the best kind of presentation of the data, and still it will be hard for people to swallow, I think.
Very good point. Thanks, Jonathan. I would say from the academic perspective, we're having to get people to check their references, go back to the primary source. That's the main thing, because you can get those hallucinatory resources that don't exist. So, yeah, just be careful. Okay, Michael, how are you going with all the burgeoning chat? Are there any strong themes that haven't been addressed yet?
There's one more ChatGPT related question, and then we might change tax a bit. But Richard asked, for new analysts / data scientists, how do they check their own work in regards to ChatGPT and validation? So how would they validate their own answers? And are there mentors in the industry who will check your work?
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a like a learning mate, so a wingman or a wingwoman, that can help validate your work. So if you're learning a certain skill, it's always good to have that person. But if not, you can absolutely reach out to people in the industry and people that are actually working in that particular field, and just check the data is correct. The other thing is that there's so much information on the web that is actually sound. So things like the Australian Bureau of Statistics, if you look at those stats that are actually published and authorised by government agencies, that's something that you would typically validate first before you go asking other people to peer review. But yeah, just totally reach out. We're a community of sharers, so we like to get excited about stats.
One comment on that question would be is well, like so asking how do you check your own work? I suppose if you're asking ChatGPT to check the work, I'd be a little bit concerned, because you are the expert, right? You're the person that's gone through those years of training of understanding your statistical techniques and methods. So that's where I would, rather than ask ChatGPT, as Charmaine said, ask a buddy, or if you've got a manager or a senior person that you regularly work with. Those should be the kind of questions that you're bringing up with them and having a discussion around, because that's ultimately your area of expertise. You've got to remember, ChatGPT is a large language model. It doesn't actually know much about statistics or modeling or these things. It just knows how to put words together in a way that often makes sense, but not in every single field. So yeah, I would think checking your work, depending on what that work is ill-advised. Coding, it's good. It can be good at doing, but when you're sort of talking about concepts and theory, that's where, yeah, I think actually being a bit old school, going to Google and looking at more robust references is probably the way to go.
Okay, Michael, shall we change tack?
Yes, I think so. We have some related to data cleaning. So I think I've caught everyone's before that, but we'll jump onto this one. So this is from Selma. In the data cleaning process, when we ask qualitative data and free text responses as justification for their response, can we discard any data based off the qualitative response? In other words, can we remove the records if the qualitative data, vague responses, is not justifying the quantitative data? That might be one that's a bit easier to just read at your own pace. There's a lot of, it's just pasted down at the bottom here. And then we'll come to Edwin's one after that, because I saw that one just above.
I might jump in first. I want to say probably all data is good data, even if it's messy or dirty. And so maybe I would say never, ever, ever, ever delete any data, because even the blank data or the vague data or the dodgy data or the whatever data, that's actually all good information. And so I think when it comes to free text fields, you want to kind of categorize it. But if someone, say, leaves a field blank, you can actually ask the question, why did they leave it blank? What sort of person who's responding to this would leave it blank? And maybe you can find characteristics of the type of respondents who might say that, or if someone maybe writes an obscenity, that would, that might be someone who's upset at whatever you're asking about. That's actually another piece of information that you can make use of. So I would say never get rid of your data, never ever delete it, but you might want to kind of categorize it and clean it, and then just try to work out what's the best use of this, how can I draw some conclusions.
Yeah, and if you decided not want to use that observation in your analysis, and then that is something that you probably need to discuss with your stakeholders or the subject matter expert. Like, that's not something that you can just say, yes, we want to use it, no, we don't want to. It's really based on what you're trying to analyze and whether that getting rid of that will influence the result of what you want to analyze. But yeah, like Jonathan said, keep a copy though. Don't delete the raw data. Yeah.
Okay, we might go straight to this one from Edwin, and he asked, "What is the biggest difference in terms of technical needs? And is there, what's the big in terms of?" I think he's trying to say, what is the biggest difference in technical needs in the workforce compared to your time in education? I don't think that's directed at anyone. Just
I'm happy to start with, I don't think you ever stop learning in terms of education. It doesn't matter what means it is, whether it's university, whether it's an online course, whether it's self-directed learning. There would always be a push and pull to keep learning and applying that knowledge with your work. So I would say it's a 50-50. So you're constantly learning. And if you're fed up of learning, it's maybe not the right career for you.
Yeah, I think experience in the workforce is kind of learning in itself, really. The first time you start as a graduate, you'll see a problem. It'll be the first time tackling it. It's going to take you a little while to work out what the solution is. And then the more industries and you work in and different problems you see, you're going to, come to things and go, I've seen something similar to this before. And the previous project I've done, it won't be the exact same problem, but you've got those learnings to bring with you as to how you solved something last time and how you could do it better this time around. So I think, I think that, I'd look at them as it is all learning. Education is learning, experience is learning. It's just a different type of learning.
I might just hop in there and say, because I spent 7 years in government, when you work inside the workforce in industry, you get more time to help formulate the right question. So sometimes people pose a question which can be answered, but it's not the right question. So working from within, it can actually mean that you help direct the questioning, not just the answering. That's a big difference. Okay, we've got just time for maybe one more question. Michael, there's something that hasn't been raised before.
There's sort of two main themes throughout the rest of the questions. That is people interested in your practices of data cleaning, and then the other theme would be advice for someone wanting to move into data science, like the field of data science. This one here says, where should I start? What should I focus on, etc.
Okay. Maybe Jonathan and Lillian, who haven't said something recently.
Maybe I can talk to that where to start question. I did see some question about internship as a PhD student. I can't answer that one. Maybe Ollie can. But in my experience, there are a lot of internship programs that you can try to apply for, and apart from that, there are also a lot of workshops that you can attend throughout the year, and maybe just try to keep an eye to that. And just even though you don't get an internship, but by talking and connecting with the industry people can be a good start. And the other thing is maybe I mentioned in the beginning is to do some projects on Kaggle or whatever platform that you use to practice your data science skill and share that to your network. Maybe LinkedIn is the good start, and if you keep doing so, people will notice. That's my experience. Hopefully that's helpful. Anyone want to add something?
Maybe we'll just put together some notes on practices of data cleaning, because that might be more technical. But we might start wrapping up. I did want to mention that the Stats Society of Australia, so I'm not sure about New Zealand, they actually run a mentorship program. So you could just contact your professional organisation if you are looking for a mentor. I know that I was in a position working as a sole statistician a few times, and yes, it can be useful to have someone that you feel comfortable with talking with. So a mentor, there are lots of people who offer to be mentors through the Stats Society. Is there something like that in New Zealand?
Yes, there is.
Yep, great.
In
So
fact,
just
I think it's been linked in the chat if you're from New Zealand.
Good. Thank you. And there was one comment that I wanted to make about the link between qualitative and quantitative information. I work at a university with a lot of social science, and the mixed methods is arising as a new interface for statistical and quantitative methods, how it does cross over the boundaries with qual. So there's a whole rich field of mixed methods if people are interested. Would everyone, let's go around the room. Is there one last thing that everyone would like to say as a take-home message?
Probably
Keep doing what you're doing. Go for it.
Yeah. There you go.
Just keep being curious and keep doing what you're doing. That's the most authentic way that you can thrive in this career, and just enjoy it. I recently interviewed Ruth Pozuelo, who is one of the Power BI MVPs, and she's got over 125,000 subscribers on YouTube. And that's what she just does. She learns by doing, shares, and learns through sharing, and she's authentic in her approach. So I use her as a kind of role model. So please, be curious and enjoy learning.
Jonathan?
Oh, yeah, I was only just going to say keep learning. I think that's the essence of this career or this field.
I'll go with a piece of advice that I guess I wish I kind of knew maybe while I was still studying. So maybe to answer some of the questions that have come through around, where to start or what are good things to learn. Where you can, try and learn SQL. I know in New Zealand it is a skill or a language that is not really taught at the universities, but ultimately SQL is going to be the language that you use to query your databases where most of your data is going to exist. So if you are wondering about something that maybe you're not covering in your university courses or a skill that you think would be really useful to have, I think SQL is one of them. And between something like SQL, Python, and a dashboarding tool like Power BI, you're going to go a long way in the career, the field, in terms of where it is at the moment.
Thanks, Ollie. Lillian?
I would say technology keeps changing, but your experience and knowledge builds up. So just enjoy your journey and keep learning. And we are in a human-centered society. As long as you can communicate with each other, like data is just a way of achieving a common goal.
Lovely. Wonderful. I thought that was a lovely organic chat. So thank you to everybody, our 4 speakers, Daniela Vasco, who set everything up and is working around her other responsibilities at the moment. And also Michael, thank you so much for moderating all the questions. And a huge thank you to all our participants. So yeah, if you want to clap or clap online or however you do it in human or virtual sense, we will put together, be sending you a link to the presentation. So if we find there's lots of other unanswered questions, we'll leave it up to the presenters to see if perhaps we can group the responses and answer, add just a little bit more detail to help make sure your questions are answered within reason, of course, because we're all busy people. So thank you very much, everybody. And yeah, we'll be tuning out.